Before we dive in, tell me, what time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. My sister needed a cosigner. That was the whole reason I was there. Not because anyone wanted me there. Not because my mother had suddenly decided she missed me, or because my brother-in-law thought it would be nice to have the whole family together for something special. I was there because my sister's credit score was in the 400s and the dealership wouldn't touch her without someone else's name on the paperwork. That someone was me. I want you to understand something before I tell you the rest of this story. I had been the family's safety net for as long as I could remember. Not the favorite, not the one they called to celebrate with. The one they called when something needed fixing, when the numbers didn't work, when the plan fell apart. I was the practical one, which in my family was just a polite way of saying I was the useful one. And useful people don't get to have feelings about being used. My name is Audrey. I'm 28 years old. I work as a project coordinator for a mid-size logistics company downtown. I drive a 2019 Honda Civic that I paid cash for, and I live in a one-bedroom apartment that is, by any reasonable measure, perfectly comfortable. I am not flashy. I have never been flashy. Growing up, my mother called it being low maintenance. My sister called it being boring. My father never called it anything because he rarely spoke to me at all unless he needed something notarized. My sister's name is Renee. She is 3 years older than me, and she has always occupied a different category of existence in our family. Renee was the beautiful one, the social one, the one my mother showed off at church and my father bragged about to his coworkers. Renee had gotten married young to a man named Troy, who sold insurance and drove a BMW he couldn't quite afford. And together they had built a life that looked impressive from the outside, and was, from what I could gather, held together mostly with optimism and credit card debt. The car she wanted to buy that day was a Mercedes-Benz GLE, $58,000. Base model. She had shown it to me 2 weeks before at Sunday dinner, the one family dinner per month I still attended. Mostly out of a sense of obligation I had not yet fully examined, and she had scrolled through the photos on her phone with the specific energy of someone who had already decided the thing was hers and was simply waiting for the universe to confirm it. "Isn't it beautiful?" she said. "It's very nice," I said. "Troy says we deserve something reliable." She had set her phone face down on the table in a way that communicated the conversation was over. "I'm gonna need you to come with us Saturday. To sign. Not would you mind. Not could you help me out. Just I'm going to need you." I should have said no. I want to be honest about that. I had every reason and every right to say no. And part of me, the part that had been quietly keeping score for about 15 years, knew exactly what I was walking into. But there is a particular kind of pressure that comes from a family that has trained you since childhood to equate your own needs with selfishness. And that day, I was not yet strong enough to push back against it. So I said yes. I drove myself to the dealership that Saturday. My mother and father were already there when I arrived, which surprised me. I hadn't known they were coming. My mother was wearing her good blazer, the beige one she saved for occasions she considered important. My father had on his gold watch. Renee was in a cream-colored wrap dress and heeled sandals, holding Troy's arm, and already talking to a salesman like she owned the place. No one looked up when I walked in. I stood near the entrance for a moment, waiting. The showroom was cool and bright, all polished concrete floors and vehicles staged under recessed lighting like pieces of art. A young woman at the reception desk smiled at me. I smiled back. Audrey. My mother's voice from across the room. Not warm. More like she was identifying an object that had appeared where she'd left it. "You're late." I checked my phone. I was 4 minutes early. "Sorry," I said, out of habit. Renee didn't hug me. She handed me a bottle of sparkling water she'd taken from a tray on a nearby table and said, "You look tired. Did you sleep okay?" Which was her way of saying I looked bad. The salesman, young, eager, slightly overwhelmed by the assembled group, was explaining the features of the GLE: heated seats, panoramic sunroof, driver assistance package. My father was nodding along with the expression of a man who understood the world of things like panoramic sunroofs. My mother was touching the leather interior with 2 fingers, very gently, as if appraising it. At some point, the salesman said quietly and professionally that they would need to run the financing. Renee turned to me. "That's where you come in," she said. So we went to the finance office. Small room, round table, a man named Gary with a calm face and a folder full of paperwork. He explained the terms. The monthly payments would be just over $800. The loan would be in Renee and Troy's name with me as co-signer, meaning if they stopped paying, the bank would come to me. Gary looked at me when he said that part, not in a pointed way, just the look of someone who wanted to make sure the person signing understood what they were signing. I understood. I looked at Renee. She was checking her phone. I looked at my mother, who was standing near the door with her arms folded. She gave me a small nod that communicated nothing except impatience. I signed. The drive back to the showroom floor felt different after that. Or maybe I felt different. There was a specific hollowness that comes from doing something you already know you'll regret, and I was sitting in the middle of it, trying to look normal. Renee, meanwhile, had transformed. She was radiant in the way she always was when she got what she wanted. The kind of joy that had nothing inside it, just surface and light. She was taking photos of the car on her phone. She was laughing with my mother about the color. She was letting Troy wrap his arm around her waist while she tilted her head toward the roof of the vehicle like a catalog model. I was standing near a pillar about 12 feet away, still holding my untouched sparkling water. My father came and stood next to me. I thought for one brief and foolish moment that he was going to say thank you. "You know," he said, looking at the car and not at me, "if you dress better, you might actually attract a real man one day." He said it thoughtfully, like advice, like and I say anything. He walked away. About 20 minutes later, my mother appeared at my elbow. Renee wanted to take photos outside, in the natural light, and they needed someone to hold her bag. "Can you?" My mother gestured vaguely at the bag in question, a large tan tote that Renee was already holding out in my direction without looking at me. I took the bag. I held the bag for 11 minutes while my sister posed in front of her new car. I counted. I had nothing else to do. When she was done, she took the bag back without a word. Then she looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since I'd arrived, and something shifted in her expression. Not warmth exactly, but a kind of assessment. "You have something on your shirt," she said. I looked down. There was nothing on my shirt. "Oh no, never mind." She squinted. "It's just the way it's cut. It looks a little off." "Is that from Target?" "It's from Madewell." She turned back to Troy. My mother appeared with a cloth from her purse, one of those small square cleaning cloths she kept for her glasses, and held it out to me. "Here," she said, "just in case." She said it without cruelty. That was the thing about my mother. She never needed cruelty. She had a way of making you feel small that was wrapped so tightly in practicality that you couldn't quite locate the wound. I took the cloth, I didn't use it. What happened next moved quickly, and I want to tell it exactly as it happened because the details matter. We had moved back inside. Renee was at the reception desk doing final paperwork with Gary. Troy was looking at another vehicle across the showroom floor, a coupe in dark gray, with the energy of a man already planning his next purchase. My father was on his phone. My mother was refreshing something on her iPad. A couple came through the front door of the dealership. They moved the way some people do in rooms like this, without performing anything, without looking around to see who was watching. Just present. The woman was maybe 45, in a simple black dress, and the man with her was the dealership's general manager, whose name plaque I had noticed earlier by the main office. He was walking slightly behind the couple, attentive in the specific way that people in service industries are attentive when someone very important walks into a room. The couple paused near the GLE that Renee had just purchased. My mother looked up from her iPad. Renee, who had very good peripheral vision for things that interested her, looked up from the paperwork. The manager said something to the couple and gestured toward one of the newer models across the showroom, a fully loaded variant, not the base. The kind with the upgraded trim package and the MSRP that sat comfortably above $90,000. The man said something and nodded. The woman smiled. My mother straightened her blazer. "Who is that?" Renee murmured to Troy, who had drifted back over. Troy didn't know either, but he stood up straighter. "This is the part I can only tell you from my own angle. Because I was standing where I was standing and I could see what I could see." The man, the one with the manager, turned slightly, and his face moved through my line of sight, and I felt my chest do the specific thing it does when you see someone you love in an unexpected place. It was my husband. His name is Marcus. We had been married for 2 years. We met through a mutual friend at a work event, dated for 8 months, and got married in a small outdoor ceremony with about 30 people in attendance, none of whom were my immediate family, because I had not invited them, because by that point I had understood certain things about what my family added to my life and what they did not. Marcus is a structural engineer. He is also, as of about 14 months ago, a partial owner of a development firm that had, in that same period, done quite well. We do not talk about money in the way that some people talk about money. We pay our bills, we save, we give some away. We live in a house that is nice without being ostentatious, in a neighborhood that is good without being showy. I drive my Civic because I like it, and it runs fine. Marcus drives what he drives because he needs reliable transportation to job sites, and also because he has, if I'm being honest, a quiet appreciation for well-made things. What Marcus drives is a Range Rover, fully loaded, the kind that costs more than some people's houses. What Marcus was doing at this dealership on this particular Saturday was looking at a vehicle for his business partner, whose company car was a fleet purchase and whose request Marcus had offered to help with, because that is the kind of person Marcus is. He did not know I was here. I had not told him about the co-signing because I had not yet figured out how to explain it in a way that wouldn't make him look at me with that specific, gentle concern he got when he felt I was letting my family treat me badly. Which I was, and which I would have preferred to handle privately, as I always had. But here he was. He saw me at almost exactly the same moment I saw him, and his face did the thing it always does, this immediate, unguarded softness that I have never gotten used to and hope I never do. He changed direction mid-sentence, said something briefly to the manager, and walked across the showroom floor toward me. "Hey," he said, "what are you doing here?" "My sister bought a car," I said. He looked at me for a moment with an expression I could not quite read. Then he nodded, slowly, and said, "Okay." He took my hand. And that is when my mother looked up. I watched her see him. I watched her take in the way the manager was still hovering attentively near the edge of the conversation. I watched her notice the Range Rover visible through the showroom window, which the valet had pulled around to the front while Marcus and I were talking. I watched the specific recalibration that moved across her face. Not subtle, not especially. As she crossed the room in our direction, Audrey. Her voice was different now, warmer, more textured to it, like she'd turned a dial. "You didn't tell me your husband was going to be here." "I didn't know," I said. She smiled at Marcus in the way she smiled at people she wanted something from. "We've heard so much about you." Marcus smiled back. He was unfailingly polite with everyone, which was one of the things I loved about him. And also in this moment, the thing that made it hard to read his face. Renee had materialized from the direction of the reception desk. Troy was with her, and both of them were doing the smile, the one the whole family did when the social calculus of a situation shifted, and they needed to adjust their positions. "Oh my gosh," Renee said, with a brightness that had not been in her voice once during the entire time I'd been standing in the showroom. "I didn't know Audrey's husband was coming." "You should have said something, Audrey." I hadn't said something because no one had spoken to me in a way that invited me to say something, but I let that sit where it was. My father appeared. He shook Marcus's hand with the kind of firmness that was meant to communicate equality between men. "Great to finally meet you properly," he said, even though they had met twice before, at my wedding and at a dinner the Christmas before last, neither of which my father appeared to retain any memory of. The manager was still nearby. He recognized Marcus, I understood, from a previous interaction, some business context I wasn't fully aware of. He greeted him by name. This did not go unnoticed by my family. I stood in the middle of all of it and I want to be accurate here, I felt very quiet inside. Not numb, not angry exactly, just quiet, the way a room gets quiet right before something shifts. Marcus put his hand on the small of my back. "Did you drive yourself?" he asked me, quietly, near my ear. "I did. Do you want to head out? I can follow you." I looked at my mother, who was in the middle of explaining something to Marcus about how proud she was of Renee's new car and how the family had all come together for such a lovely occasion. I looked at Renee, who was describing the features of her GLE to Marcus with the energy of someone who had built it herself. I looked at my father, who was nodding seriously at something Troy was saying. Not one of them looked at me. I thought about the cloth my mother had handed me. I thought about my sister's eyes landing on my shirt and finding it wanting. I thought about my father standing next to me and choosing, out of all the things he could have said, to say what he said. I thought about the signature I had put on Gary's paperwork an hour ago. The one that meant that if my sister stopped making $800 monthly payments, the bank would call my name. "Yeah," I said to Marcus. "Let's go." He said a brief, warm goodbye to everyone. He thanked the manager. He kept his hand on my back as we walked toward the door. My mother called after us, something about getting together soon, about dinner, about how we really needed to spend more time together as a family. I raised my hand in acknowledgement, but didn't turn around. The automatic doors opened, and outside the afternoon light was flat and bright, and the Range Rover was at the curb, and I got into the passenger seat and Marcus got into the driver's side, and we sat for a second in the particular quiet of a car before it starts moving. "Do you want to talk about it?" he said. "Not right now," I said. He nodded and pulled out of the lot. I watched the showroom windows as we drove away. I could see Renee standing inside near her new car, still talking. I could see my mother beside her. Neither of them was looking toward the door. I turned back to face the road. There's a version of this story where I end with something big, a confrontation, a speech, a declaration. I've replayed the day enough times to have written several of them in my head. Cutting remarks I didn't make. Truths I could have dropped like stones into still water. But here is what I've come to understand. I didn't need to say anything. The room had already said it. The manager's deference, the car at the curb, Marcus walking across that showroom floor toward me. All of it had said something without my having to raise my voice or lower my dignity. My family spent years making me feel like the practical one, the useful one, the one who showed up with the right credit score when they needed a signature. They never once asked what I was building quietly on my own. They found out on a Saturday under fluorescent dealership lights in front of a salesman named Gary and a general manager who knew my husband by name. I didn't need the last word. I already had it. If you've ever been the family member who gets called when something needs fixing, but gets forgotten when something's being celebrated, I want you to know, I see you. Leave a comment below and tell me, have you ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to know you best? I read every single one. And if this story meant something to you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. You never know who's holding that cloth and wondering why they keep saying yes. I've thought a lot about that Saturday since it happened. Not obsessively, I'm past that. But in the way you turn a small stone over in your hand and keep finding new angles to it. What strikes me most isn't the moment Marcus walked across the showroom floor. It isn't the way my mother's voice changed register the second she understood who he was. It isn't even the cloth. Though I still think about the cloth sometimes, the casual certainty behind it, the way it was offered like a verdict. What strikes me is how long I participated in it. That's the honest part. That's the part I had to sit with. I signed those papers because I had been trained, over decades of small daily lessons, to believe that keeping the peace was the same thing as being good. That absorbing other people's needs without complaint was a form of love. That my discomfort was less important than the smooth surface of a family gathering, a Sunday dinner, an occasion that looked fine from the outside. That's not goodness. I understand that now. That's just fear with better manners. Here's what I actually believe about how life works. Not as any kind of doctrine, just from watching cause and effect play out in my own experience. The way you allow people to treat you teaches them what you're worth. Not to the whole world, not in any permanent sense, but in the room, in the relationship, in the specific dynamic you've built together over years. Renee handed me that bag because I had held it before. My mother offered me that cloth because I had always accepted what she handed me. My father said what he said because nothing in our history had ever suggested there would be a consequence. I'm not angry at them for that. I was part of the pattern too. What I am is different now. And the difference didn't start with Marcus's Range Rover appearing at the curb. It started months before that, in smaller, quieter moments. The Sunday I didn't go to dinner because I simply didn't want to, and nothing terrible happened. The phone call I let go to voicemail. The favor I said no to, just once, just to see how it felt. Each of those moments was a kind of practice, building something in myself that hadn't been there before or hadn't been strong enough to hold weight. Intelligence, I've come to think, isn't just about what you know. It's about what you're willing to look at clearly, including the parts of yourself you'd rather not examine. It took real effort for me to look at my own role in that dynamic, to stop framing myself only as the victim of my family's behavior and start asking what I was getting out of it too. There was something familiar in it, something that felt, wrongly, like belonging. Letting that go was harder than walking out of any showroom, but here is what I know. The moment I stopped asking my family to see me, I became visible to myself. And that turned out to be enough. More than enough. If you've been holding someone else's bag for a long time, figuratively, literally, in whatever form that takes in your life, I'm not going to tell you it's easy to set it down. I'm just going to tell you it's possible, and that the person waiting on the other side of that decision is someone you'll be very glad to finally meet.